Okay, review time. 1972 World Champion Oakland A's. This was, of course, the first of the Oakland A's three-peat of the 1970s, 72, 73, 74. That gets started with the offense as we look at the top of the order, as we always do. Set in stone every day, leading off Burt Campaneris at shortstop, Joe Rudy second in left field. Let's take a look at their on-base chance numbers. You see Campaneris' numbers a little bit down, not crazy about the numbers you get out of him. Rudy's numbers check out just okay. I wish the number against lefties was a little bit higher, but I'm also going to go ahead and show you the runner advance hits for Joe Rudy. And I really do like to see this in a lineup when you have a number two hitter who has nice numbers with moving hitters along with hits with multiple base advancement. So that's good to see out of your number two guy, Joe Rudy. Now, let me go ahead and show you the right fielder against right-handed pitching. Hitting third in the order was Matty Aloo. I'm going to show you his runner advance hits. Aloo that year has a little bit of a strange card. First off, he only had about 130 at-bats in 1972. So what I think this card is a result of is he probably only had about 20, maybe 30 at bats against lefties and really cleaned up against them. If you're using Alou, keep in mind he's a lefty bat who has better numbers against left-handed pitching. Now let's take a look at Reggie Jackson, the center fielder. He hit cleanup against righties and third against left-handed pitching. I'm going to show you all of his numbers, his on-base chances, and his hits with multiple base advancement. I wish on the surface Jackson's runner advance hits were a little bit higher. Just like most players, he does have a couple of ballpark effect home runs on his card, which can help him if you're playing in the right park. But again, I wish Jackson's hits with multiple base advancement was just a little bit higher than what you're seeing. Now, let me go ahead and show you everyday first baseman Mike Epstein. He hit fifth in the order every day. So you see his hits with multiple base advancement. So you get that. Now I'm going to show you the numbers for the right fielder against left-handed pitching. This is the right-handed hitting side of the right field platoon with Matty Alou, who plays against right-handed pitching versus lefties. We have Angel Mangual playing right field. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, but you see his on-base chance numbers and his hits with multiple base advancement. You get very nice production out of Mangual in right field, hitting six in your order. Now let me go ahead and show you the numbers for the everyday catcher, Dave Duncan. You see his on-base chances and his hits with multiple base advancement. Those are nice on-base numbers for a guy who would regularly hit seventh in your lineup. And obviously, keep in mind this is 1 year before the implementation of the designated hitter, so there is no DH on the 1972 Oakland A's in their regular lineup. So that's pretty much what you get out of the 1972 A's. Next, I'm going to show you third baseman Sal Bando. Obviously, he played every day. He would hit cleanup against lefties, and he would hit six against right-handed pitching. And you see his hits with multiple base advancement. So if we're to look at the block of players who hit between 3 and 6 in your order, you could see none of these multiple base advance hits or extra base hits really jump out to you. The numbers are just, I would say, at best, just okay. I do like the fact, however, that you do not really necessarily have any automatic outs anywhere in this lineup. It's just that this offense is lacking that one or maybe even two cards in the lineup where you say, okay, this is the centerpiece of my lineup. That's how I landed on the offensive score that I did for the 1972 A's. I got them as just slightly above an average offense, as I gave them threes for on-base percentage, middle of the order, and I gave them a 3.5 for righty-lefty mix. So that's how the 1972 A's offense is looking. Now let's look at the defense. Let's start up the middle. You're very solid at shortstop with Campaneris. You have a platoon at second base with Larry Brown, who will play against lefties, and Tim Cullen would play against righties. I'm not crazy about having a 3 at second base when Larry Brown plays. Tim Cullen is a 2 at second base, but I'll talk about that E rating later on. And also, I'll drop a suggestion later in the video as to what you could do to help fix your defense at second base. Now let's go to the outfield. These are your four outfielders that would pretty much play. Obviously, Rudy and Jackson, left field and center field were every day, and we have the platoon in right field. Obviously, the defense in right field is not looking good at all. Obviously, Joe Rudy is looking terrific in left field as always. He's a 1 with just an E2, but also the defense in center field is not looking that good either. And the one thing about the outfield defense is there really isn't much you could do to really mask the issues with the outfield defense. Even if you are sitting down and playing with a friend, and let's say you just say, okay, let's go ahead and put a DH in the game, you really don't have any real options to come off the bench and maybe either put Reggie in right and play someone else in center and maybe DH Aloo or something like that. You really don't have any options. I guess you could maybe use George Hendrick in that situation. He's a 3 in center. In fact, he's a 3 in all 3 outfield spots. But that's the way the outfield defense is looking. And then you look at the corners. You are very good, as you would expect, with Sal Bando at third base, but the defense at first base is not looking good either with Epstein. There is something you could do about the first base defense, however, which I'll also talk about at the end of the video. But if we're to look at the 1972 A's defense, you'll see that they grade out with a pretty low score of a 2.7 out of 5 as really just a little bit above average when it comes to middle infield and outfield defense, but the E ratings are just not looking good at all. The big issues with the E ratings are in positions where you really don't like to see high E ratings, specifically at first base, because anyone who plays Strat-O-Matic knows that the splits are very high with the corner infield spots. That's why lots of times I'll completely ignore if a first baseman is a 3 or a 4. I don't mind it just so long as their E rating is in line. But when you have a 4 with a high E rating at first base, that's not good at all. You obviously have a big issue with the E ratings in right field. You got a high E rating in center field with Reggie Jackson, and the E rating at second base when Tim Cullen plays is way, way too high for a middle infielder. So the 1972 A's defense, when you go by their starting lineups according to the Strat-O-Matic book, we're not looking very good at all. Now let's dig into the pitching. I'm going to first do the 1972 A's bullpen. Let's get started with the closer, Rollie Fingers. You see his on-base chance numbers right there. My only issue with Rollie Fingers' card is he does have a little bit of a power issue when he faces right-handed batters. You see his ballpark effect home runs on the bottom there. No ballpark effect home runs versus left-handed hitters, and he has 4 against right-handed hitters. So that could be a little bit of a problem. And then as we look at the bullpen depth, let me show you the numbers for Joe Horlin, Darryl Knowles, Bob Locker, and Dave Hamilton. First, let me highlight what you get out of Bob Locker. Here is a right-handed pitcher who is very, very good at getting right-handed hitters out, and there are no ballpark effect home runs on his card at all versus lefties and righties. But you could see this is definitely a guy that you could use as a specialist to come in and get a couple of right-handed hitters out. And Dave Hamilton, who actually started 14 games that year, so you can use him as a starter or reliever with the 1972 A's in Strat-O-Matic. This is a lefty that you could have out of the bullpen who is pretty efficient at getting left-handed hitters out. So that's always a nice option to have out of the bullpen. And then you also see the on-base chance numbers for Harlan and Knowles. So the bullpen depth is looking excellent for the 1972 A's, and couple that with Rollie Fingers getting a 4 out of 5. I give the 1972 A's bullpen a very good score of a 4.5 out of 5. So that's a big help for the 72 A's overall score coming off of the poor score that I had to give the defense. Now let's look at the starting rotation on the 1972 A's. Let's get started with ace Catfish Hunter. You see his on-base chance numbers right there are looking excellent, and his ballpark effect home runs are pretty much in line. That's pretty much average for a starting pitcher. There's no issues right there with him having any power issues. So Catfish Hunter is looking very, very good as your ace. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you the numbers for the starting rotation depth. Let me show you the numbers for Vida Blue, Blue Moon Odom, and Ken Holtzman. You see, all those numbers are looking very nicely, especially out of Vida Blue. So you could see, based on these numbers that you get out of Holtzman, Odom, and Blue, the 72A starting rotation goes a solid 4 deep. And I would even go a little further and say that what you get from 1972 Catfish Hunter and Vida Blue, that is a very, very good 1-2 punch in a starting rotation. And I gave the 1972 A's a perfect 5 out of 5 score for the starting rotation because Catfish Hunter 1972 is a legit ace, absolutely terrific card. And I really do like the depth in the starting rotation. You have a solid 4 starters here where this starting rotation would be hard to beat if you sit down and you're playing a best of 5 or a best of 7 with someone. So if we were to look at the 1972 A's as a whole, you'll see that they grade out with a good score of a 3.8 out of 5. The issues that I spoke on earlier really lies in the 1972 A's defense. There were some issues that you have there, which let me go over with you real quick. First off, if you are sitting down to play with the 1972 A's and you decide to play with the DH, let's say you're playing a team from the EH era, one thing you could do to fix your first base defense is I would just go ahead and play Mike Hegan at first base. You see his defensive rating right there, and I would just use Epstein as your everyday DH. So you could fix the first base defense that way. Also, what I would suggest doing to fix your second base defense is I would either play Kubiak or Maxville at second base rather than Brown or Cullen. Simply because I don't think Brown or Cullen have good enough cards to justify their defensive ratings at second base. I would suggest those fixes when it comes to the 1972 A's, because the one thing which we just went over, the 1972 A's starting rotation and bullpen is so good that you really don't want to have bad defense behind them, because in lots of ways that could be an offense's only way of really getting to the starting pitching. I spoke before about the 3 in center field, the 4 in right field. You're not looking that great at second base. You're looking terrible with the first base defense. So if you could just sort of fix some of those issues when you sit down to play with this team, this is a team that I may have graded out as a 3.8 out of 5. But in reality, if you just address some of these defensive issues, this is a team that could play well above a 4 average, because the starting rotation and bullpen on this 1972 A Strat-O-Matic team is that good. This team can beat anyone in Strat-O-Matic based on how good their pitching is. So that's my review on the 1972 World Champion Oakland A's. I thank you all for watching. It is much appreciated, and I'll talk to you all down the road.